Trey Lance, this is going to be his first year starting, had 2 starts last year, and they were kind of hard to really read what the offense is going to look like underneath him. I don't think it's a fair assessment to determine much from those 2 games. In training camp, one of the big storylines was the rise of Brandon Aiyuk. And Aiyuk obviously being a first-round pick, the Niners and John Lynch, Kyle Shanahan put a lot of investment into Aiyuk in hoping that he turns into a player that lives up to his draft stock. You want him to live up to being a first-round pick. Last year, he was vastly overshadowed by Deebo Samuel, but that was with Jimmy Garoppolo under quarterback. The question is this going to be the year that Brandon Aiyuk takes over? Because from a draft investment standpoint, you would say, in theory, you'd like him to be the guy as opposed to even Deebo.
Yeah, no, and that's a good question. We kind of saw him last year kind of actually digressed from what he actually was for his rookie year. He had a monster rookie year where he was just creating play after play. And then last year, it took him quite a while. It took him about that half point of the season for him to start showing some of those flashes again. So we definitely can't have that. We can't afford for him to, around week 8 to finally start showing the type of receiver that he is. We need him, from week 1. Deebo Samuel obviously is going to just garner so much attention after the year that he had. So opposing defenses are just going to focus in on that. They start to focus on the run game and focus on George Kittle. So the opportunities are going to be there, and they're going to be there immensely for Brandon Aiyuk. And everything that we've heard coming from camp and coming from the offseason that we just had is that he's looking to step into another level, and he's looking to step into that role where if for some reason the run game isn't going and for some reason George Kittle isn't able to get the ball, that he's going to be that next option, and that him and Trey Lance have had this great connection so far, that it's going to lead to more productivity from Brandon Aiyuk. So that's really all I'm hoping for. I'm hoping for is more of that rookie year Brandon Aiyuk and some of the flashes that we saw in that season compared to how slow of a start he had last year.
Well, this is his 3rd year. So the Niners have to make the decision on whether or not to pick up his 5th year option. So this is a very important year for Brandon Aiyuk ultimately. And there's financial incentive for him to be the guy on this team. And it muddies the waters that Deebo just got the extension he did, because that kind of suggests that the Niners still view Deebo as the primary target. And you look at last year's production, and why would you not? Deebo was sensational. But they also paid George Kittle a couple years ago too. So George Kittle, financially, they're tied to him and want to make sure that he feels like he's a very integral part of that offense as well. So a lot of experts, if you just look at this from a fantasy football point of view, look at Brandon Aiyuk as the 3rd guy on the Niners offense and targets behind Kittle and Deebo. Given that they've given the extensions they did, there's not as much pressure from the Niners' perspective to force feed Aiyuk. I feel all the pressure is purely on Aiyuk to make the Niners want to pay him a future contract or to continue to keep him on the roster. And obviously he doesn't want to settle for being a wide receiver 3, a Mohamed Sanu for his entire career. He wants to be a guy that lives up to where he was drafted. And there was a lot of talented wide receivers drafted in Aiyuk's class too. So he doesn't really want to fall behind any of these guys. We just saw the Jalen Reagor trade from Philadelphia to Minnesota, and everyone remembers how the Vikings were laughing. If you're Aiyuk, you don't want to feel being drafted in that range like you're one of those guys that busted relative to your peers who excelled at the position in that draft class. So Brandon Aiyuk, let's take a look at what he had last year and see what we would realistically want from someone like him. And the offense is going to change, right? In theory, should change under Lance. So last year in the regular season, 84 targets, 56 receptions, 826 yards, 5 touchdowns. I would love him to be more of an 80 to 100 catch guy. I think that that's something that I would ask of Aiyuk. 826 yards, get to the 1,000 club for the first time in your career, right? And 5 touchdowns. Touchdowns are such a hard thing to predict anyway. So if he finished with 5 touchdowns, that's not a killer. You can live with that. That's fine. So 1,000 yards, 80 receptions, that would be considered a winning season for me for Aiyuk. That would be a realistic target for me.
It's not a lot to ask. Well, it could be a lot to ask for, just because the only way that doesn't happen is just that he doesn't get the targets and he doesn't get the opportunities, just because of how the rest of the offense is kind of created and how the run game is basically the focal point of this offense to begin with. But the fact that you do have those playmakers kind of opens it up for guys like Brandon Aiyuk to go in there and have some success. So if he's able
Yeah.
to,
Let me
so if
throw
he's
this.
able to match at least, the yardage wise, I thought 826 wasn't too bad. But if he could get into that 1,000-yard mark and then get into 80 catches, I think that's a phenomenal season for him, as technically being the third option too.
So last year, the Niners were among the bottom half of teams in pass attempts per game. With Trey Lance coming in, do you think that that's going to change any?
I think it might change early, and depending how Trey Lance looks during those some of the early part of the season, that will dictate the rest of the season. I think if Trey Lance looks comfortable and he's able to run this offense and is proven that he can make every throw in the playbook, then I think they're going to start opening it up a little bit more, and you're going to see the run game decrease a little bit. But if the opposite of that happens, and if Kyle's starting to see that Trey isn't able to make some of these deeper throws or some of these throws down the middle that require a little bit more accuracy, then I think, they're going to have to go back to running the ball a little bit more.
Do you think the Niners would pick up his fifth-year option if let's say, he replicated his 2021 numbers?
I think they might. I think they might give him a chance to at least prove that he'll have a better year even next year. Because remember, this is going to be everyone's first year with Trey Lance. So you're just hoping that all of these guys are going to get better with him at quarterback, including Brandon Aiyuk. I think if he does get to those 800 yards, and I think it'll be important how he finishes the season as well. If he finishes the season like he did last year, and in the playoffs, he was actually, crucial in getting some of these, just getting open in a lot of opportunities. So I think if he has a strong end to the season, I think that will definitely be way more beneficial for him than if he just had a, good start and then kind of faded off towards the end of the year for sure.
Okay, guys, what do you think? Do you think Brandon Aiyuk breakout season is loading? Do you think we're going to see more highlight reel type plays? Like, of course, his rookie year, you remember him vaulting over the Philadelphia player. Hopefully we see more of that kind of stuff happening. Do you think he's going to be having a bigger role than guys like Deebo Samuel, or can even pass Kittle as the number 2 option on this team? I want to know your thoughts on the comments. Leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel. Juju, Jose here talking. 49 Reasons Listen to right here. Stay safe, happy, and healthy. We will see you next time.